Welcome back to Open to Work Beyond the Label, the podcast for talent in transition. Today's guest is a powerhouse in bold communication. Ivna Curi, she's a Fortune 500 speaker, a TEDx speaker, a Forbes contributor, and the host of Speak Your Mind Unapologetically podcast. And she has over 400 episodes. Ivna is on a mission to help people leaders master high stakes conversations, the kind that create real impact. She works with organizations to build cultures where voices are heard, ideas flow, and teams thrive. Her work empowers managers, directors, and VPs to lead with confidence, clarity, and courage, even in the toughest conversations. From coaching executives to running high impact workshops across industries like tech, healthcare, and consulting, Ivna helps leaders turn communication into their greatest asset. In this episode, we will dive into Ivna's journey from finding her own voice to helping thousands do the same. If you've ever struggled to speak up, lead through conflict, or foster more openness on your team, this episode is for you. So let's welcome Ivna. Ivna, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate the opportunity and happy to be here.
So, Ivna, I said a lot of incredible things about your background because you have such a robust experience. Tell us who you are behind the LinkedIn headline and everything that we can find on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I love that question. And I don't get to talk about it as much, but I do love all things international and different cultures because I have lived across the Middle East, Asia, obviously here in North America, but also Canada, Latin America, Europe. And I really enjoy being around people from different cultures because of that. And another thing is I really love nature, gardens, all things. I mean, California is beautiful weather here where I live. So I am one of those tree huggers, and I get really upset when I see trees being sacrificed. And I also love Latin dances like zouk and samba of gafieira, forró. These are less known here, but I do love those dances as well.
Incredible. Well, thank you for that background. And I'm sure having that diverse experience of meeting people from across the globe has helped with your passion of communication because, as you know, in different cultures and different languages, communication varies quite a bit. So tell us what inspired your passion for bold communications and throughout your life experience, was there a specific moment where you realized the power of speaking up?
Yes, so there were a couple of moments, and I would say the very first one happened when I became a people leader for the first time. I joined a new company and I had a new boss, and I was lucky enough that in that job, in that first job that I had managing people, my manager was the chief commercial officer and a very experienced, very great communicator, a very talented man, great with people, great with getting things done, just all around a fantastic leader. And I remember the very first day when I joined the company, and he put me in charge of supply chain for the entire company. This is like a $2 billion company at the time. And he took me to a client meeting with the head of supply chain for Walmart, and they were unhappy with the deliveries from our company. And I remember I sat there and I had a plan. I had a plan. My plan was I have no idea what I'm doing. I am just a 24-year-old girl, basically at the time, who knows nothing and very insecure. I'm just going to sit in the side, sit in the back, just stay quiet and listen. But that's not the plan that my manager had for me. So he constantly, in that meeting, even though the client was, the head of logistics and supply chain, was upset, was nervous, he constantly said, "Hey, sit next to me," even though I sat in the corner, or next to him, in front of the client. And every time the client said something, he would turn to me and say, "Ivna, what do you think we should do here? What do you think is the solution to this? What are your thoughts?" And and on our way back to the office, he would keep saying those things. And that became my new reality for the next year and a half working for this chief commercial officer. And that taught me. And every time he pushed me to speak up in environments where I did not feel comfortable there was some risk involved. He supported me. He never protected me in any way. He never spoke on my behalf. He pushed me to speak up. He let me fail, and then he'd coach me to do better. And that developed me tremendously. In fact, once the CFO of that same company, the chief financial officer, called me up, first time I ever talked to him, and wanted me to hire his nephew. And when I looked at the CV, I knew immediately that was not the right person for me, for my team. My very first hire, I got a team, and then, but that was the first hire that I could choose and select. And I didn't have the courage to tell the CFO. When I asked my manager, the chief commercial officer, what I should do about it, he said, well, that's up to you, but you have to deliver the decision to the CFO. And I struggled to do so. Third time I talked to him, I had to say no. And it turned out to be the very thing, the way I said it was the very thing that made him respect me. And later, about 6 months later, even though we never talked again, agreed to loan me at the time, $50,000 to sponsor my MBA, which had never been done in the company before. So through all of that and that experience in that job, I learned how bold communication can really change. I could tell you so many stories, but let me leave it at that.
That sounds like a great leader because they challenged you to speak up. And I can tell you that from my experience, there's been a lot of leaders who want to speak on your behalf.
That's right.
And the leaders that encourage you to speak are the leaders that help you to grow. So that's incredible that that leader helped you. But more importantly, the power of no. I have seen that once you lean in to the power of saying no, you really do create within yourself this, it's almost like this power. I have the power. I control what I do and what I don't do, and I have the ability to say no. And it just creates a different person in my eyes, because you've got people pleasers, and then when they finally find the word no, it changes everything for them.
It does. It does. It's so powerful when we find that ability and the skill and the courage to be able to say no to what matters.
So, Ivna, you've done so much in your career, and being a Forbes contributor and having a TEDx presentation, all of that is so incredible. Before all of that, what was your relationship with your voice?
Well, I didn't have one. The most common word used to describe me by, at the time, teachers, professors, employers, managers, colleagues was nice. Nice, at some point, I'm like, that is so bland. I don't want to just be nice anymore. There's so many beautiful adjectives to describe someone. Why just nice? And I was nice because I was a great listener. I was empathetic. I was caring. Not that I'm not those things anymore. Still am. I was thoughtful and considerate, but I was also a big people pleaser, quiet, insecure, and silent most of the times. And I didn't feel confident in sharing and expressing myself. And when I did speak up, it was extremely soft-spoken, almost like a hush, like, please don't listen to me. I was just so almost like embarrassed to say anything, to even be caught saying something because it might be silly and stupid. And I was scared of being seen as someone who is selfish, arrogant, difficult, not nice enough, aggressive, abrasive. I definitely did not want any of those adjectives to use to describe me. So that was my challenge. And so I speak from a place of, yes, I know what it's like.
Well, have you ever read the book Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office?
Yes, that was me.
That that's a good book.
It's a great book.
There's so many things in there that I was like, I didn't realize that was a thing. So you're right. Don't know any women at the top that I would describe as nice. Kind is good. Having a kind leader is a good thing. But you also have to be strong. You have to be assertive. You have to have these other adjectives that aren't just nice. Because when you're just nice, you're right. A lot of people just kind of take advantage of that.
And no one's going to get promoted because they're nice and kind. That's great to have, but it's not the edge, the thing that's going to get you the opportunities, the growth, and the ability to have a greater impact.
Absolutely. So can you share a time when not speaking up, had real consequences for you or your team, and how did that experience shape the mission that you're on now?
And I could share again so many stories, and my inability to speak up at the time affected my team more than anybody else. Affected me, obviously, but my team especially. And it became more apparent when I had a team. So I have so many stories, but one of them that I really like is that one day my team members basically did they brought me to an office room, and they had an intervention because my leadership style was very nice. They said, you're so kind, you're so nice, you work really hard, you're not asking us to do anything that you're not doing yourself. You're a great role model, and we can tell you care about us. But the problem is we're burnt out and we're overwhelmed, and I can't even plan my yogas at night, and I can't plan anything at night because you seem to be unable to say no to to leadership around workload and everything that comes in. You say yes to everything. And what makes it even worse for us, this is my team telling me, is that a lot of the times our work doesn't get used. We get no feedback on it, and it really, we do the work, it disappears, and we feel like we're wasting our time and we're losing our personal time. And literally some of them actually burnt out, and I could see it because they would get explosive, and even though they were super kind and mellow. And I realized, oh my gosh, my inability again to basically push back on certain work and try to prioritize and make sure that this was the meaningful type of work, or look for more resources for my team and negotiate on behalf of my team, led to the team burnout. And at that point, I knew I had to do something, and I had to confront my senior leadership and really challenging them in the work that was coming through, plus requesting more resources. And I did. It wasn't easy at the time, and things improved for my team. I also got a reputation because of that when I was starting to recruit internally within the team. There was a hiring freeze externally, which typically happens with companies. And someone confided me, nobody is applying for your job because your team, you have a reputation of creating a very harsh work environment where people are overworked, and nobody wants to be part of that.
Wow. How grateful are you, though, for that feedback?
Oh, so grateful. So grateful. And luckily my team did speak up and did share a lot of challenges and issues they had with me early on, and that helped me become a better leader for them and for the company.
That is it. If you are on a team and your leader is not being effective for what you need, and you have the right skills and you have all of the will, and it's just the leadership that's really getting in your way of progressing and accomplishing your goals, say it out loud. Let them know. The amount of times that I've had people complain about their leadership, and it's like, well, what did they say when you shared this feedback? And they hadn't. They hadn't shared the feedback. Go talk to your leader and share that feedback. There's going to be times, let's be honest, there's going to be times where the leader isn't open to feedback. And I think that's a leadership issue, right? I think that's an issue with that person. But you can't complain about your situation if you haven't at least taken the opportunity to share the feedback and try to resolve the issues.
Absolutely. There has to be at least an attempt.
That's where, again, communication is the root of all problems and all solutions.
It is. It is. And that's why I'm so passionate about it.
So, what was the moment you decided to make bold communications your life's work, and how did people react when you did that?
Well, it's a really interesting question because it did evolve slowly, but the moment it became apparent to me was when I was preparing my applications for my MBA. You know how they have these essays that you have to fill out, and they always ask you about what are you going to do with all these skills, and what's the future going to be like, and all of that. And I came to the conclusion, like every time I struggled with something in my life, I turned to education and upskilling myself to get over that. And every time that's been the thing that's helped me overcome all of my struggles, including the struggle of speaking up. And even though I had that amazing mentor at the beginning of my career, And when I look back and I thought, well, what are the skills that would have made the biggest difference for me earlier on in my career? And the answer for me was assertive communication. And when I looked around me, nobody really taught assertive communication, how to communicate powerfully, how to speak up powerfully and with influence. It wasn't taught at school. It wasn't taught by my parents. It wasn't taught by my employers. Luckily, I had this mentor who really taught me. But how many people have that opportunity? Very few people. And that's when I realized I have to bring this forward. And I did two boot camps where I created a whole business case around this. And I went on to do this. When I decided to quit my job to start this, obviously there's a lot of um, doubt from family members. It was really hard to do. But right now, I am so happy with the impact. And my goal, right, is to amplify the voices of 30 million professionals and leaders by 2030, and then keep going beyond that. So I'm really excited. I'm really happy with my decision.
That's an incredible goal. And the reality is, when we have these ideas that are disruptive, that are different, everyone's going to tell you why you can't. I mean, isn't it, if they've never seen it before, it's not possible. And the people who push past that doubt and continue to believe in themselves are the people who are the most successful. And so, how did you push past all of the doubt of others as you really chased this disruptive idea?
It is a challenge, like you said, Laura, because on one end, there's the fear that the people that you love, that you care about, might reject you. They might not like your decisions, and that's going to happen. And so the other side of that, right? Because there's two parts of this. One is to make the decision for myself. The other one is to speak up and communicate to the people around me that are going to be affected what my decision is. That was the hardest piece for me, right? The decision was easy. It was communicating to others that this is what I wanted to do. And that's why I delayed it, because I didn't want to communicate it. Now, what made that possible was really focus on the goal and the desire and what I was trying to achieve. And when I stopped to think about, okay, the path that I'm going in here, what does ultimate success look like for me? And will that give me the satisfaction at age 60 of reaching that? If absolutely goes the best possible way, will that make me happy? And I realized that it wouldn't. And that's where I realized I had to shift, even though this new area, this new path was risky, was uncertain, and might get a lot of disapproval.
Yeah, but we often think about the worst that can happen.
We do.
We're not thinking enough about the possibilities of what could happen. What if we do achieve our goals? What if we do make this happen? And then, of course, what if we fail? But how are we going to pivot? How are we going to move on? And ultimately, failure is a part of life and we have to accept it. I think in life, we've been taught failure is bad. We need to change the narrative on that, because the most successful people actually love to fail, because it means that they've tried and now they've learned and now they're growing. So we need to change the perception on that. But we got to think about the possibility. What if it all goes right versus wrong?
That's right. Absolutely. And that completely builds that courage to move forward.
Absolutely. So when you're working with teams, I'm sure you see that there are individuals who maybe stay quiet. So, how costly do you see this as being within an organization?
It's incredibly costly, and people do not realize that. First of all, most companies and leaders don't even think that they have a speak up problem within their teams. And that's the first hurdle that I face. And there was a great study done between MIT and Microsoft that showed that 2/3 of their employees were not speaking. Microsoft, you know, some of the best people out there. 2/3 of employees were rarely speaking up. And when they did speak up, it was something just to benefit themselves, like, you know, being able to leave on time or some promotion, but definitely not speak up on behalf of the company. So 2/3, there's a big issue. And then other studies show that miscommunication happens daily for leaders and at least once a week for individual contributors. Miscommunication is a big problem and can slow down all sorts of projects and cause tremendous unnecessary failure. So failure is great if it's planned, if it's you're learning through it, but just because of miscommunication, that's not the ideal way or reason to fail. And another big issue, and another study showed that about 1 month per year is wasted on average with employees on unproductive communication, on unresolved unresolved conflict. And so if you look at that for an average employee, let's say earning $100,000 a year, that's $20,000 plus of inefficiencies due to poor communication. And that's just part of the problem. There's so many other issues around innovation. If people are not speaking up, you don't leverage the diversity of the group to really think through problems, problem solve, come up with creative solutions. It means that you're not really getting the full value of that team and of that diversity. If people are not speaking up, it means that decisions are not that great, they're poor. It means that the collaboration diminishes significantly. It means that a lot of people might leave the company because they don't feel heard, and leaders will never know. So there's a lot of serious implications when the team is not speaking up fully.
The speak up culture is critical as well in my eyes. And what I see often is individuals get on a call to discuss a problem and they're so focused on the how we got here instead of the okay, but how do we move forward? What feedback do you have for teams who have that problem?
That is a big issue where there's a bit of a blame culture. And there are a couple ways to solve this. The first one is leadership needs to model the way and questions, the right kind of questions that get people to focus on the future and improvement versus the past are going to change everything. So if leaders know how to ask specific questions that move the team towards that improvement, that future-oriented solution state, that's going to make a tremendous difference. And the second piece is, and I'm super passionate about this, which is assertive communication. If everyone learns how to speak up in a way that is respectful, that is forward-looking, that is solution-oriented, and that has some level of influence. Blame, what influence is there in blame and complaining? And there's another element that can be done, which is setting expectations or building forums or certain types of meetings with the purpose of solving a problem or future-oriented solutions. And that way you set it up for success, right? And people know that once they enter that room or that forum or that meeting, that's the format, that's the expectation, and everyone is aligned towards that goal.
Those are great ways to overcome that type of challenge. Now, you've said bold communications equal bold results. So, what does that look like in action, and why does it matter now more than ever?
It does matter. It always mattered, and it will continue to matter even more because we are in the era of technology and AI. And a lot of the things that depended on us can be executed. Logical processes can be done with AI much better, much faster. Now, even AI can't thrive if we can't ask the right questions. That's communication. We need to communicate well with AI for it to work. And we definitely need to communicate well with people to identify the right problems, identify it. Basically, AI is like a team member. And we all need to be leaders and be able to communicate effectively with our resource, our team members, in order to facilitate that collaboration more than ever before, because we don't have this, in these days, the silo of teams working individually and not interfacing with other teams, that's also gone. And so we need a lot more partnership and ability to communicate effectively together so that we can identify the important problems, prioritize issues, and then look for innovative solutions together in a way that's not wasting people's time and keeping people focused and AI focused as well.
It makes sense because if you put bad data into AI, you get bad results, right? If you try and implement technology, but you have bad processes, then the technology doesn't matter. Now you just have technology on top of bad processes.
Yes.
So it makes sense that if you have poor communication within an organization, you're going to have poor results because it's the input equals the output. So if it's poor, it's going to be poor. So that makes really good sense. Having good communication, bold communication, assertive communication is going to make sure that you have those bold results. That's really impactful. Thank you for sharing that. So, Ivna, what are some of the biggest mindset shifts you help leaders make to go from avoiding tough conversations to owning them? I think a lot of leaders avoid the tough convos. How do you help them to own them?
Ownership is critical, and ownership is one of the key values that I instill in everything that I teach and do in the workshops that I do, because without that, we're not really effective. We're not working functionally effectively as a team. Now, what leaders need to understand is that hard conversations build respect. It builds trust. It improves relationships when done well. Avoidance of hard conversations can be passive or passive aggressive behavior, and employees don't appreciate that because it's lacking transparency. It actually kills trust. And when also there's a disconnect between what people say and their actions, or even their nonverbal language, that also creates a disconnect, and that causes distrust. And so it's very important for leaders to understand that the impact is tremendous of not actually having those hard conversations, not communicating, let's say, negative news in a timely manner in the right way, or not holding people accountable for certain things, or not delivering tough feedback in a timely manner and ongoing basis, because they're also missing out on an opportunity to help people grow, evolve, and support the team. Because when you don't address one problem in the team, it affects the team morale overall. Another one is just courage. I look to help people cultivate courage to speak up, but also skill. Those are the two things they need. They need a bit of courage to get it started, and skill. Skill is going to de-risk speaking up. It's going to reduce, and when you de-risk speaking up, the courage naturally comes up because now you know what to do. And it also increases our influence when we have skill, which is our ability to actually get the results that we're achieving. One of the big reasons people don't speak up is that when they've tried speaking up in the past, nothing happened. Nobody's changed their behavior. So they think, well, I'm taking the risk and I'm not getting anything in return. There's no impact. So why am I going to take the risk? Now with education, you reduce the risk and you increase the influence, which is the outcome that you're looking for, the impact of that conversation. And now suddenly it becomes attractive, like what you were talking about earlier, right? When we imagine the possibility of something, it becomes real, and we want to do that. So that's super important for everyone, really. There's a lot of things I could share, but I wanted to share those two with your listeners today, Laura.
High performers want feedback. I can't tell you the amount of individuals that I've spoken with who feel like they're not getting feedback or having those tough conversations with their leadership team. And ultimately, they're craving it. Of course, leaders need to be trained in how to have those conversations because you don't want them to become aggressive, or you don't want to make the individual that you're sharing the feedback with be defensive. So the communication and how you communicate and share feedback is absolutely critical, but high performers crave that feedback. If you have an individual who doesn't want feedback, either A, you're not communicating the feedback right, or B, they're just not a high performer. And quite honestly, do they even belong on the team?
That's true.
So that's really helpful. Now, you train leaders across industries. What's one universal communication challenge you see again and again, regardless of company size or role?
One of the challenges a lot of leaders face, especially mid-management, is they get conflicting feedback. So let's say they do get feedback and they're interested in the feedback and they want to get better with the feedback, like you just mentioned. They get conflicting feedback and they don't know what to do about it. And so I see especially a lot of women and minorities who get feedback that they're being too difficult or abrasive or aggressive or too soft or not pushing hard enough or pushing too hard. And they don't really know what to do with that. And often they rationalize the wrong answer, and that leads them to either go more quiet, not ask for more feedback, or try to, speak up too much or be aggressive or be overly direct. And it makes things worse because they don't really understand the nature of the feedback that they are receiving.
How do you address that? I've been called aggressive one or two times.
I can't
And
see that. I just don't understand.
you gotta understand in that moment, I was like, I think you gotta look in the mirror. The people that were saying it to me. So I didn't take up, and so often us women, we get called things, and I think we do feel it affects us personally. And actually, I think you just have to sometimes think, is it a problem with me or a problem with them? That's how I felt at that time. So it was all good. But how do you address that issue? Like if it keeps coming up, what are some ways that people can overcome those challenges?
Yeah, and I'm with you, Laura, because I've been also called aggressive and too direct, even though everybody thought I was too nice and not speaking up enough. So those things happen a lot, and especially for women. And the best way to address that is to lead the feedback conversation. We kind of have to make it really safe for others to share. When people give that kind of feedback, like did to you, they clearly, like that's the first indication they have no skill in giving good feedback, right? They have no idea what they're talking about. They haven't thought it through. They don't have specific examples. They don't have recommendations of what you can do better. And what we need to do is try to extract the value, if there is any, from that feedback that's hidden back behind several layers. The person doesn't even know what they're talking about. We need to help them think through that. And then when we have some solid information that we can act on, then we can decide if we're going to do something about that or not. Maybe collect more feedback from other people to validate if that's an issue or not, or if it's just a specific thing with that individual, like you were talking about. But either way, we're leading the feedback conversation.
Yes, that's helpful. So we talked a lot about poor communication. What do great leaders do when it comes to communication, and how can aspiring leaders start embodying that today?
There's tons of things great leaders can do, but I'm going to give you some examples that are a mix of organizational, but things that leaders can implement. So the first one is design it, right? Bring openness and a speak up culture by design. So Pixar has something called the brain trust meetings. Have you heard of that?
No.
No? So what they've done is to create a specific forum, a type of meeting where film directors come in and everyone else, their job is to basically criticize their ideas. And so everybody is expected to provide constructive feedback in that meeting. That's the only purpose of that meeting. It's not to compliment them, it's to deliver constructive criticism. Now, here's the thing. The film directors, they need to be there and listen. They present their ideas, listen, but they do not have the responsibility of implementing any of the things that they heard. All they're doing is absorbing that and then deciding what to do. Designing that process, designing the speaking up, the moments of speaking up in a certain way, that's something that's very helpful because it puts people in that mood and they know what they're expected to do. So build in expectations around that. Another company that does that really well is Amazon. They have the disagree and commit principle. You probably heard of that, which is solving a big problem, a human problem, which is you're in the meeting, you say nothing, you don't like the idea, you think, what an idiot, I can't believe they said that thing, oh my gosh, and then they go back after the meeting and say, oh my gosh, did you hear that? That's ridiculous. And then they start having these side conversations, just not addressing the issue, by the way. So they're not saying anything in the meeting, and then they're not committing. Disagree and commit is you're in the meeting right now, this is your time to disagree, you're not going to disagree later. Disagree now. And if once we walk out of this meeting, the decision is made, no more disagreement, you commit. So now again, we're creating expectations around how to behave as a proper leader and how to move things forward. I feel like that principle is phenomenal. Bridgewater Associates, Ray Dalio, I'm such a fan of Ray Dalio. with his, he just tested out all these new concepts around radical transparency. And if you read his book, it's just principles. It's full of ideas, very bold on having those radical, honest conversations where everybody understands their faults and their limitations and their strengths, and leveraging that. It's not for everyone. It's not for every organization. It's not for every team, but I think there are great ideas in there as well. Rewards are very important. Rewards can be just complimenting people who do speak up, who are brave enough to disagree, to challenge, to express concerns, or share problems and not just smile and show up with solutions all the time. In fact, there's so many things. Asking very specific questions, for example, instead of, hey, any thoughts? Are you guys on board with this? That's not going to get people to speak up. Versus, hey, what's one concern you see implementing this? What's one risk, what's one potential risk that you feel like we should be prepared for in this situation? Words tremendously change people's engagement and their willingness to contribute. Generic questions do not do that for people. So yeah, there's so many other little tips for leaders to get their people to speak up.
That's very helpful. And I did a life coach certification as an opportunity to just enhance my skill set. And what I will
Nice.
say is that I think it's great for leaders. Why? Because it helps you to ask those open-ended questions and facilitate ideas and conversations from your people versus barking ideas and feedback at your people.
I agree. It's a really great skill. And leaders who are great coaches are probably the best leaders out there.
Great leaders invest in themselves and continue to grow and to get better and to learn and to know that at the end of the day, they don't know everything. So the fact that you're recommending books and different ideas, and it's not going to work for every organization, that's what makes great leaders, is being a reader and learning from others and implementing what's going to be best for you and your culture.
Absolutely.
So, looking back on your career, what advice do you wish that someone shared with you to help you to use your voice more in rooms where you felt small?
And there's a lot of rooms where we feel small. That's a big challenge. Once, this is a different leader, I was very quiet because I felt small in these meetings because I was probably the most junior person in the room. And I remember once my leader said, hey, I noticed you're being very quiet in meetings. I don't know why you're not speaking up. And you're coming across as aloof, like you're daydreaming. You're not present. You're not interested. You're disengaged. And that was not at all the reality. I was super engaged. I was just too scared. I didn't think I had something meaningful to contribute. But realizing that I came across as aloof and disinterested really changed my perspective on things and helped me start speaking up. So what I would tell my younger self is there's so many ways to add value other than sharing a brilliant idea. And if I could realize the different ways in which I could do that and start tapping into it and experimenting and seeing how people respond, just experiment things early on. Do as many social speaking up experiments as you can so you can start to get feedback loops from people, see how they respond. You're going to realize that actually speaking up makes a tremendous difference in how people perceive you, how they relate to you, how they respect you, and how they like you.
Absolutely. Yeah, they can't know who you are if you don't speak up.
They can't.
So you've helped thousands find their voice, and there's going to be thousands more. But what impact so far are you most proud of?
I am really proud of a lot of the feedback that I get from students. And I actually put one here that I want to share. I have so many of them, but I have one of them that said, this is giving me 1,000,000 fold back. I feel more powerful and confident, even in conversations with people of authority. This was a woman, and a Black woman, a minority, who in consulting, who was struggling, and she felt like she was at risk of losing her job, of being laid off because she was too quiet. She wasn't contributing enough, even though she knew she was overqualified. But people couldn't see that. And she didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to get the attention of the partners and how to share her ideas and how to bring her contribution forward. And that saved her. And it saved her confidence, and it brought her just a renewed sense of pride in herself and her work, and an ability to actually get more opportunities and be recognized for that. And just hearing that every now and then just brings me tremendous joy and reminds me that I'm doing the right thing for what my purpose is.
Yeah. There are a lot of people, and this podcast is about being open to work. And everything that you shared today is helpful in terms of someone finding their voice and realizing that you have to use your voice to continue to advance in your career. You have to leverage your network in order to find a new opportunity. So, hearing that this woman was able to advance her career, to be able to change her trajectory, to ultimately not get laid off because of her investment in working with you is something that I don't think we say out loud enough. We all see, like, I'm on Instagram and I see all of the different courses, and now even on LinkedIn, people are blasting all of these different opportunities for us to invest in ourselves, right? Invest in our brand, invest in our communication. We should be considering these things as opportunities to invest in ourselves. So often we start to look at it because there's so many different messages coming at us. We look at it as an ad or let me just keep moving or, whatever it may be. But actually, I've invested in some of these courses and in some of these programs. And guess what? I take something away every time. Me investing in my life coach certification. So investing in a coach to help get to your next level or to find your next opportunity is something that I would highly recommend because sometimes we just can't do it on our own. Sometimes we do need a little bit of help, that little bit of push, or a lot of bit of help and a lot of bit of push.
And even if they don't want to go down, having the coach route, I do a lot of workshops for companies, and there's always a huge marketing effort, promotion effort to get people to show up because they don't even want to invest 1 hour, their lunchtime, to come to the professional development that's paid by their company, by the way, to help them improve, and they still don't show up. But those who do show up report just tremendous things and change in their understanding of some of the causes and things that weren't working. And they have a path to move forward. And that awareness sometimes takes people their entire career to figure out, if they do at all. And so realizing what are the resources that your company gives you and taking advantage of those things, I think is also a huge thing.
Absolutely. You have to show up for yourself.
You do.
And even if it's something that is company mandated, show up, take advantage. You have an opportunity, seize it. And not everyone gets that opportunity because not every company invests in these types of programs. So if they're investing in that program, they're investing in you, and you should take advantage of that opportunity. So,
Absolutely.
Ivna, for someone who is feeling stuck, unheard, afraid to speak up, what's one first bold step that they can take today to take control?
I love the word take control. One of my favorite things, not controlling people, controlling our actions, controlling ourselves, controlling our future, our journey. Love the word control. There's one thing that I believe more than anything else is education, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know how to improve if you don't know that there's something wrong, or that's something that's not optimal in the way you are conducting yourself. And you might be putting in all this effort into something that's not leading to positive results. Anywhere in your life where there's something that's not working, there is an answer out there. There's something that can help you, some skill that can help you overcome that. I myself, one of the things that I'm not good at yet is sales, because I come from corporate environment, from analytics, from engineering. I'm not great at sales. So guess what? Every day I spent 1 hour a day training myself in sales, because that's what it takes. And that's what's changed things for me. And so whatever area, whatever opportunity, wherever there's a challenge for where you look at what is the skill that can help you address that. And like you said, Laura, we need to invest in ourselves. And if that happens to be, I can't speak, I don't know how to speak up, I'm too quiet, or I'm getting these feedback, I'm scared, I don't have the confidence, then I'll send you, Laura, a link to my 10-day challenge on how to be likable, both likable and assertive. so that you can have the warmth, the connection, plus meeting the authority and the credibility. And I'll also share the link to my podcast, Speak Your Mind Unapologetically.
Thank you so much, Ivna. So those are two great assets that we'll include in the show notes. How else can someone reach out to you if they're looking to learn more or looking to work with you in some capacity to step into their bold communication?
Yeah, so there's a podcast. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll share my email as well, so you can email me, and I'd be happy to, even if you're not looking to hire anything, I'll send you a couple of articles or thoughts or videos or trainings that could be a next great step for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ivna, for being here today. And thank you for all of the advice that you've shared and all of the feedback that you shared. Again, communication is key. And the fact that we don't have programs out there outside of what you've built so far on bold communication, I think was a miss. And I'm so happy that you're filling that gap.
Thank you so much, Laura, for the opportunity and for your amazing questions. You're very thoughtful with your questions. I can see how you're a tremendous coach as well. So I really appreciated this opportunity to come and share with your lovely audience.
Thank you again. We'll chat soon.